Hello, we're live and on the air, and this is Ed Dyer, and you've just joined the TWIS Minion Science Island Hangout. In case you're wondering, Minions of TWIS means we're followers of the greatest science show in the universe. This Week in Science on every Wednesday night, 8 o'clock Pacific time with Kirsten Sanford, Dr. Kiki, Blair Basderich, and Justin Jackson. I usually have a couple of minions joining me, may not tonight. I know one of them, Pam Taylor, in Australia, is taking a law exam as we speak, so thumbs up, Pam. We also have sometimes Justin Jackson. He usually works late, maybe 9 o'clock or so Pacific Coast time, maybe another couple of hours if in fact he can make it. But while we are here, it is always tough to pick the best, most interesting science stories, and there are bunches of them tonight. Primarily, I'm going to be focusing on environmental sustainability and robot technology. Could be a good thing, could be a bad thing. We've got Iceland. Now, Iceland's power plants have figured out a little trick to turn the carbon into stone, bury it in the ground, and doing it a lot more quickly than they had expected. We've also got making eggshells into batteries, recycling, always a good thing. In some places, Texas, you can rent your rooftops for cheap energy. That is always a good thing. Eco-friendly reduction of arsenic in rice. Yes, there is arsenic in rice, not dangerous levels, but some researchers have come up with a way of reducing those arsenic levels. You have desalination plants, primarily in the Middle East. Those countries rely on converting salt water into fresh water, and then you got a problem, a byproduct with brine. And researchers have found the better method for dealing with that. We got augmented reality in laptop and smartphones. And as I say, that could be a good thing, could be a bad thing. We got an interesting story about robots, drones, and cows. Ooh. If we get to it, we can talk about antidepressants in children, really not such a great thing, and how there's researchers have found that when men and women think about cooperating, it activates different areas of the brain, and this could help us learn more about how brain function works, and that'll help us in researching problems. But my first story, which I'm going to share with you, screen share, so you don't have to look at the top of my bald head. And this story is about hobbits, the little fellows that were found on the island of Flores. And there's been a lot of speculation as to whether or not these are archaic humans. Were they perhaps diseased humans that shrunk and had less brain development as a result? But researchers have now conclusively proven that they're an offshoot. They're an offshoot of the hominin ancestral tree. They're not Homo sapiens. And let's see, reading from the story, these half-sized hominins lived about 600,000 years ago, and they're almost certainly ancestors of the ignomatic hobbits, whose fossils were found on the same Indonesian isle in 2013. There are two studies that were published and they filled in a huge gap in our understanding. And starting with just a modest haul of teeth and bones from an adult and two children, they've now been able to conclusively prove that these Homo floresiensis arrived on Flores, 2 different time periods. There are larger species of hominin, or, well, early man, probably about 1 million years ago. These two upright, tool-wielding humans, they shrank generation after generation until they were barely half their original weight and height, called island dwarfism. And it's the first time this has been found in a hominid. The Hobbit was real. This is Adam Broom, who's an archaeologist with the Research Center of Human Evolution at Griffith University, Queensland, Australia. It was an ancient human species that is separate to ours and no longer exists. The new fossils were unearthed in Central Flores around 2014. The find provided partial answers to key questions. Which species did H. floriensis evolve from, and how long did it take them to shrink? Two plausible evolutionary scenarios remain regarding their regarding their origins. The first is that the hobbits represented a kind of dwarfed Human erectus from Java. Human erectus is about 1.8 meters high, 6 feet tall, weighing in at about 154 pounds or 70 kilograms, thought to be the first human species to have ventured out of Africa. This particular species dated to about 1.2 million years ago, when much of Indonesia, the archipelago, was a single landmass. Similarities in teeth to this pointed to this as the most likely parent of the Flores humans. The alternative theory is that these creatures descended from an earlier, more archaic, small-boned hominins from Africa. This finding today squelches once and for all any doubters that believed Homo floriensis was a merely sick human Homo sapien. Most surprisingly was that the recently examined specimens were no larger than those still living on the island more than 600,000 years later. The co-worker, Yoshaki Kafu, was stunned with this new results, a huge surprise. This suggests that Homo floriensis is an extremely ancient species that evolved as its small size on Flores at a very early time period, possibly soon after it arrived on the island about 1 million years ago. And I see WizMike has joined me in the chat room, in the screen share. How you doing, Mike? So it isn't human. It's an archaic form of hominid. But the interesting thing is that it's the first hominin species that we can see that developed island dwarfism. That's, you get on an island, you have limited resources, and so you evolve to be smaller. Now, if Justin Jackson can make it, his great idea for when we have bazillions of people on the planet, we'll just shrink down to small size, like these people, 3 foot tall. Hey, half the size we are now, half the room we take up, we'll use half the resources, problem solved. Okay, just keeping an eye on the chat area. I want to let Mike know that where he can find the YouTube live hangout. Okay, now the second story. This is the trend, the healthy trend we're seeing towards private contractors doing space science. In this particular case, it's called the Moon Express, and it's a privately sponsored mission to the moon. A little bit different in this case because they went through an approval process, and they got approval for their project from regulators in Washington. Okay. Let me screen share this with you. There we go. You got a picture, in this case of a man on the moon. The U.S. government on the verge of approving the first private space mission to leave Earth's orbit, according to Wall Street Journal. This approval will allow the California headquartered startup, the Moon Express, to land an unmanned spacecraft, 20 pounds of scientific equipment on the moon in 2017, which is just next year. The pending approval is important in two critical and related ways. One, it sets a precedent for for-profit companies to work in tandem with the U.S. government in space exploration beyond Earth's orbit. In addition, the approval would lay the diplomatic groundwork for how these private companies must interact with international regulators and long-standing treaties that call upon the U.S. and other countries to supervise government and commercial aeronautic activities. In other words, the moon belongs to everyone on Earth. No one country owns the moon, and if people are going to be landing on the moon, landing on the Mars, starting space colonies, the best idea is let's go through an international body. You know, let's not, I know the Chinese have a project to get to the moon. Their idea is to mine the moon. I kind of doubt they're going to be looking for any regulatory authority, but it really should be thought of as an international resource. In recent years, they've already seen NASA working with entrepreneurs, and that's really a great thing we're seeing. And not just relying on NASA and government programs because they really don't have the money, but to get private entrepreneurs involved. We have Elon Musk, SpaceX. He currently runs commercial cargo resupply missions to the International Space Station. We got Jeff Bezos and his Blue Origin, one of the 6 government contractors who provide flight service for NASA missions. And part of the impetus for business programs is shared belief that the Earth resources are exhaustible and we need to move on to the next chapter of humanity. Move off the Earth to the moon, to the Mars, and beyond. You know, this Moon Express website calls the moon an 8th continent, holding vast resources that can help us enrich and secure our future. Great idea. They're going to be looking at such rare earth elements as helium-3 and plutonium group metals. They're also vying for Google's Lunar X Prize for development of a lunar spacecraft. So this is a good story showing that the trend towards getting private contract, private business involved in space programs. That's going to really help the push towards space. This marriage between government-sponsored programs and private enterprise. And SpaceX they're having success. They're landing their reusable rockets now, having, I don't know how many successful missions now, 4 or 5, maybe at least. So that's a great trend. Very good thing. The next story involves Iceland. And Iceland engineers, now one of the ideas is, what are we going to do with all this carbon emissions? And one of the things, besides getting rid of it, because it's a reality right now, it's not going to go anyway soon, is to sequester it in the ground. The issue has been an efficient way of doing that, and a way of doing that quickly, reasonably quickly. You put it in the ground. If it's going to take you 10 or 20 years to complete that process, it'll be too easy for it to escape back into the atmosphere. Now in Iceland, and let me screen share this with you. There we go. That is actual carbon that has been sequestered in a rock. Now, scientists and engineers working at a major power plant in Iceland have shown for the first time that carbon dioxide emissions can be pumped into the air and change chemically to a solid within months, not years, radically faster than anyone had predicted. The finding may help address a fear that so far has plagued the idea of capturing and storing CO2 underground. That emissions could seep back into the air or even explode there. Ooh. And a study describing the method appeared in the journal of Science. Now, this is the Gila Sheldy, or something like that. I think it's Gila Sheldy power plant. It's the world's largest geothermal facility. It and a companion plant provide the energy for Iceland's capital, Reykjavik, plus power for industry. It does this by pumping up volcanically heated water to run turbines, but the process is not completely clean. It also brings up volcanic gases, including carbon dioxide and nasty smelling hydrogen sulfide. Under a pilot program called CarbFix, started in 2012, the plant began mixing the gases with water pumped from below and re-injecting the solution back into the volcanic bauxite below. Bauxite is exposed to carbon dioxide and water. It's a series of natural chemical reactions that take place, and the carbon precipitates out into a whitish, chalky material. But no one knew how fast it could happen. Previous studies have estimated that in most rocks it could take hundreds or even thousands of years. In the bauxite below Gila Sheldy, apologies if I'm mispronouncing that, 95% of the injected carbon was solidified in less than 2 years. This means that we can pump large quantities of CO2 and store it in a very safe way over a very short period of time. In the future, we could think of using this for power plants in places where there's a lot of bauxite, and there are many such places. Basically, all of the world's seafloors are made of porous, blackish rock, as are about 10% of the continental shelf. Researchers have worried that any miscalculation can result in emissions making their way back through fractures or in natural earthquakes or tremors caused by the injection process itself. As an example, a coal-fired plant in Saskatchewan that currently runs North America's only large-scale operation in a generating station has been plagued by technical problems, and the captured carbon dioxide is being sent to oil producers who inject it into ailing wells to pressure more oil out, and that produces more carbon dioxide when buried. Okay, so not working so well in Saskatchewan. But in Reykjavik, the Reykjavik Energy Company, they joined with a consortium and the University of Copenhagen to get rid of its CO2 emissions along with hydrogen sulfide. The plant produces about 40,000 tons of CO2 a year. 5% of the emissions of an equivalent coal-fired plant. The lab experiment showed that unlike the sedimentary rocks that most other projects have used for injection, the local bauxite contains plenty of calcium, iron, and magnesium, which are needed to precipitate out carbon. Experiments have shown that large amounts of water would also have to be used, and that is a problem. Something, of course, that they're working on. And the main stumbling block beyond the needed bauxite is the water required, about 25 tons for every ton of CO2. But in a lot of places, seawater could be used. In 2010, the Lamont study has already outlined bauxitic seafloors off the U.S. coast that could be used to take up emissions. Separation and injection of CO2 in most other projects has been estimated to cost a steep $130 or so a ton, but the process used in Iceland has brought that cost down to $30 a ton. And other companies have looked at other innovative ways to use up power plants' carbon emissions. One by Exxon is to build fossil fuel cells that turn CO2 to energy, and an initiative by Ford to convert emissions to solid foams to build the inside of vehicles. It's got another project in Oman, which is looking into pumping emissions into a different kind of rock, peridota, which may react more rapidly with CO2. Okay, so they're working on solutions, how to sequester this carbon, how to find efficient ways of sequestering this carbon emissions from plants, energy plants, and if we can sequester them in bauxite and perhaps this other material, like for instance in the Middle East, where they're extracting it using seawater, you can perhaps pump that back into the bauxite on the seafloor, and then you've sequestered the carbon under the ground instead of having it flowing out into the atmosphere. Still work to be done, but at least we're having some success in Iceland. All right. Here is another interesting idea. And this is eggshells. Eggshells into batteries. All right, let me do the old screen share thing. Okay. Hopefully, oops. The old screen share didn't work that time. Okay. There we go. There you go. There's a little picture there. You got a bunch of eggshells, and there shows you how you can turn it into a reactor system. All right. Americans consume 76 billion eggshells per year, and while some of these eggshell waste can be used for fertilizer or dietary supplements, the majority is simply thrown away. Now we have Wayne State University in Detroit. They developed another method of recycling, another use for recycling eggshells, using them as what they call carbon reactors, synthesizing sulfur-containing nanorods and using them as battery electrodes. A large number of eggs are consumed, but the disposal of eggshell waste is still a challenging task. And this is Da Dang. We outlined an idea for the direct use of waste eggshells as a unique reactor system, he calls it, for the synthesis of 1D nanorod arrays on eggshell membrane protein fibers. They prepared a composite crystalline called CO2-9 S8 nanorod arrays and carbon fibers that demonstrated, here we go, promising performance in lithium and sodium ion batteries. This is just another idea. got a ways to go. This is more like a proof of theory. Hopefully they can put it into production, because if we can recycle more of any kind of waste, it's a very good thing. Now, you got two parts to the eggshell: the hard shell, mainly calcium, and the thin membrane inside the hard shell. The membrane is made of protein fibers that contain sulfur and carbon. In order to recycle eggshells for existing use, such as fertilizer and dietary supplements, the two parts have to be separated. One advantage of recycling the eggshells as a multifunctional reactors for making battery electrodes is that both parts can be used. The partially intact hard shell, carved like a small vise, is placed in a large container and used to separate two solutions: sulfide hydroxide and sulfide COSO4 on the inside. If these two solutions were rapidly to come into contact with each other, they would react to form crystalline microparticles of cobalt hydroxide. The eggshell keeps the two solutions separate for the most part, but since the shell is semi-permeable, it allows some OH ions to diffuse very slowly from the outside to the inside of the shell. After about 4 days, the OH ions raise the pH level inside the solution from 4.8 to 7, making it less acidic. This provides the right conditions for COH2O to form inside the crystalline. And okay, the advantage, okay, you're talking about using both parts of the eggshell, and the final product, carbon fibers coated with cobalt sulfide nanorods, can easily be turned into a slurry to use as battery electrodes. Now there you go. More hopeful progress. And most of the stories I'm talking about tonight, they really, as I say, kind of proof of concept. You know, the first part, the beginning point. In some cases, obviously the trend. And the issue is going to be how quickly we can make all these different processes work the way we want them to work. And as you can see, I'm going over these different stories, hopefully not too quickly. And they show progress is being made. And like all progress, you reach the point where it's slow, 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 and all of a sudden, bang, you get that more quick progress. And I think that's going to happen. We may be 5 years away from that real turning point. I don't know. But we're getting there, and we seem to be getting there more quickly than myself and most other people are predicting. Okay. Now, you're worried about your electric bill. Your electric bill is too high. Well, just move to Chile. In Chile, they're generating, the government energy companies are generating so much electrical power that they're actually able to give it away for free. In 2000, so far in the first 4 months of this year, the people living in Chile have got free electricity for 113 days. 113 days out of the first 4 months of this year. Last year, they got 192 days of free electricity. Let's see, that's like almost 6 months. Now, the reason for that, and I'm going to screen share again, give you something a little more interesting to look at than my bald head. Okay. There you go. And there's the key, solar energy. In Chile, a boom in mining production and economic growth boosted energy demands, underpinning the development of 29 solar farms in the central electric grid. And they've got 25, they've got 15 more planned. In the northern grid, most of the mines are located. The rush towards solar power generation was even more pronounced. Then we had the global economic slowdown. And that means they're now producing more electricity than they actually need. Now, they do have a problem with the infrastructure because these solar energy farms are in two different parts of the country. So if they're producing a lot of electricity in one area and they have a shortage or a problem in the other area, they can't flow one from the other. There's no connection between the two. Let's see. California also has another interesting plan. And what they want to do is they want all new homes to be zero net energy by 2020. And that's only 4 more years. That is, the homes will be producing enough energy through solar power on their roofs, etc., than the home actually consumes. In other parts of the country, energy companies, let's see, in other parts of the United States, there are thousands of homes that already meet these standards. And in some areas, New England, New York, Carolinas, and Colorado. Okay. Part of the challenge for utility companies is the fluctuating impact all this solar energy the homes are generating, how to get that into supply and demand. Solar power only functions during daylight hours. That's why we need that better battery, which we are developing. Let's see. This is Mark Duval of the Electric Power Research Institute, nonprofit utility. We know very little about how all of these devices interact, and hopefully at the end of the day, we can contribute to a greater understanding of how these technologies work together and what it really means going forward. His organization is conducting a study in California with a cluster of 20 homes that have been built to test the zero net energy concept and figure out if it's feasible on a larger scale. On Australia, we've got another, the Australian Institute, and they've carried out a survey of household homes equipped with rooftop solar panels that can boost 1.5 million. 80% are considering buying batteries to store their power. 1 in 4 Australians also want to reach that energy self-sufficiency point. And in the United States, really, that's what we want. I think all of us want, we want to be energy self-sufficient. Okay. Come on, let me press the right buttons. Let me get out of the screen share. Okay. Let's see. Someone else has joined us. Let me check the old chat room. See who else has joined us. FEX has joined us. Hello, FEX. We're talking about how we're going to be energy efficient, all of us. And the energy companies, they're dragging their heels for the most part. And if they don't go with the program, if they don't realize that solar energy is, let's see, okay, well, sorry, the old chat room. Where is Pamela? Mike is wondering where Pamela is, and Pam Taylor is now taking a law exam. She's taking the law exam probably as we speak. Hopefully, Pam doesn't need luck. She's obviously going to pass a law degree with flying colors. I should share in the chat room, pressing buttons all over the place here. Okay, I want to, let's see. What I want to do is I want to share with the chat area. FEX, who has just joined, want to let him know where the YouTube page is. The YouTube link. All right. Back to our power companies. In some cases, are not so friendly power companies. They realize they want to make it. They're on a profit basis. Okay, they're interested in profits primarily. They're not interested that much in energy efficiency, and they're not looking at the long term to the degree that they should. They're thinking short term. And in some cases, you've had programs where people can sell back the energy they get through their solar panels to the power grid. The power companies, they're giving you peanuts. It's not making sense in most cases for people. They're not going to make any money doing it. And the energy companies, they don't want you to make any money doing it. They don't want you to be using solar power. But if they don't do that, sooner or later, when that better battery is built so that people can store energy efficiently, store the energy they get from the solar panels efficiently, and run that battery, let's say 24 hours a day, maybe for three days, you get 2 or 3 days worth of energy that you can store in that battery, release it efficiently into your home. You don't need the power grid anymore. You don't need the electric company anymore. Now, a couple of power companies, they're getting with the program. And there is one, and let me share that with you. Go to the screen share again. Okay. There we go. Now, this is, it's CPS Energy, Municipal Utility of Austin, Texas. Oh, San Antonio. So, boy, can't speak tonight, guys. San Antonio, Texas. And they're pioneering a rooftop project that can overcome the barriers of the cost of solar energy, the fact that energy companies don't really want to promote this kind of energy use, and they're calling this project Solar Host. And what this does, it allows any homeowner in the utilities territory to apply for free I say, solar panel installation. The CPS Energy buys, installs, maintains, and insures the solar panels. In return, the customer leases their rooftop to the utility in exchange for a discounted electric rate. Let us see. which they can save maybe $20 a month. There you go. Rent your rooftop to the energy companies. Customers seem to think it's a good idea since Solar Host announced in October 2015, they've already filled up the number of people they need for their pilot program. And they've got enough applications to accommodate over 150 megawatts of solar capacity. So, a lot of people are signing up for this down in San Antonio. Let's see. We got charts there. We got charts and graphs. Ooh, the Solar Host program, a clever idea. Some financial barriers commonly encountered by solar programs. First, the electric utility gets its customers solar energy for just 3 cents per kilowatt hour versus 10 cents per kilowatt hour under net monitoring programs, where solar panels essentially roll customers' electric meters backwards. This helps CPS Energy to partially solve the mismatch between fixed and variable cost revenues, which you can see. There's your little cost chart, and there's your little revenue chart. And as you can see, they're not lining up. Okay, there we go. That's what it's going to look like. Okay, the common municipalities rely on variable revenues to recover fixed cost. Now we've got Rayford Smith, former vice president of corporate developing at CPS. He points out policies such as net metering are eating into the cost recovery for the assets themselves. Under net monitoring, rooftop solar can actually ruin the business sheet of an electric utility. Second, lower income homeowners can easily participate in the Solar Host program because they don't need to purchase the expensive solar panels themselves. And then third, the homeowners themselves don't have to worry about the liabilities and the upkeep associated with operating and monitoring these solar panels. CPS Energy takes care of it. I would also provide a great opportunity for the power company to address solar-induced grid instabilities. Utilities must keep the distribution voltage near 120 volts per home to provide reliable power to the consumer. Conventional power grids are not designed with solar in mind, and therefore you have intermittent output and sometimes solar-triggered circuit trips, which make this voltage instability worse. Oh, what do we got here? The inverters. So you put your solar panels. Well, actually, you don't. The power company puts the solar panels on the roofs. You can see how the energy flows into the inverter, and the unit inverter goes down into the meter, and it can flow in two directions. Some of it flows into the home, used for electric power, and the other is sold back into the grid. So this kind of partnership overcomes two problems. The homeowner, and even think of your lower income family. The lower income family okay, so the lower income family, let's see, got to follow the chat in the room. Yeah, Pam is missing out on a great hangout. Well, she can watch it later, like everybody else. No, we got 3 viewers. Hello, 3 viewers. Thank you for viewing. All right. So back to this short-term thinking by the energy companies. And now we've got this partnership that makes sense. Now, if you have enough money, you can put up the solar panels yourself. They are getting cheaper. You can rent them from Solar City. I don't know what the whole arrangements are, but you gotta have you gotta have some money. Not everybody can do it. Lower income families can't afford to do it, but you can rent the solar panels, and that's a solution. And that solution will happen when that better battery arrives. More and more people who can afford it will do it. They'll buy the solar energy panels. We're going to see solar panels all over the United States. Yeah, and I think that's going to happen. I don't know if 5 years, but certainly 10 years. Whenever they get that battery that can, it can take in and can use maybe 30 or more % of the solar energy from the sun, put it in a battery, convert it into energy, release it efficiently. And that, right now, we've gone up maybe 5% in terms of the kind of modern batteries we've got over the last 5 years or so. I know that some researchers are building batteries that are like 30% efficient in converting solar energy into power, into batteries. But you still now have the families that can't afford it, lower income families. Now, this is the solution, what we have in Austin, Texas, the SPC energy company. What they will do is they will install the solar panels on your roof. Well, you're renting out your roof to the power company. They'll put up the solar energy, the solar panels. They will take care of the liability. They'll take care of all the repairs. And they're going to generate enough power, more power than you are going to use in your home, and they get the benefit of that extra power going into their grid. They're incorporating now this solar, the solar energy they've got, along with the power that they produce, and they're bringing it together to provide a stable energy grid. Works much better than this meter system. It will work much better than this meter system where they track how much power the family is getting back into the grid, and it's just not working. This new arrangement will work much better. And I think the power companies that don't do this, that don't start getting behind solar energy in a bigger way, they're going to be left out. They're going to be the dinosaurs, and I'm optimistic. I'm really optimistic that improvements in the cost of solar panels, improvements in the batteries, I'm going to say 5 years maybe, no more than 10 years. You're going to see more, you're going to maybe 50% of the homes, 60, 70% of the homes in the United States are going to be getting their own energy from solar panels. And also that other trend I talked about in the previous story, where people are building net energy neutral homes. They're building their homes. The appliances they have are going to be energy efficient. They're going to be able to get by on less power. They're going to be able to get by on the amount of power that their solar panels use. And this two-tiered system, if you can afford it, you buy your own solar panels. If you can't afford it, you rent out your rooftop to the energy companies. That's going to be genius. And that's really going to be the future. Absolutely, it's going to be the future. Very optimistic about that. All right. Let's see. Where do we want to go next? Okay, well, arsenic and rice. What? I think there's fairly small levels of arsenic in rice, and we got some people. They found out an eco-friendly way of breaking down this arsenic. The screen share. This is also Scientific America had a lot of the stories that I'm sharing with you today. Okay. Got to show you pictures. All right, well, I guess there's your picture. Is that the right one? No, that's not the right one. I clicked the wrong link, guys. My button pressing not working too well today. Or maybe, geez, I thought I had the right one. All right, here we go. We're going to show you a picture of a hot chick instead of some stupid power grid thingy. All right, there we go. That's Angela Seifert at University of Delaware. And let's see. Mike has shared a link, which I will go to next. See what he wants us to talk about. But right now I'm going to talk about this research by Angela Seifert. And let's see. She's a part of a team of research. They've found how to incorporate rice husk into soil that can decrease the toxic inorganic arsenic levels in rice grains by 20 to 50% without affecting yield. Now, the researchers they grew rice plants in soil amended with residues rather than using something called rice straw, which I guess is the traditional method, which they found from previous studies had negative impacts on the environment. When they focused on rice husk, which is a silica-rich, has less arsenic in the tissue, and it promotes less arsenic release compared to this rice straw that's currently being used. And they also looked at rice ash. When we use these two materials and compared the growth of rice with these materials incorporated into the soil that had background levels of arsenic and relatively low plant available silica. The big finding is that when we grew these plants in fresh husk amended soil, we see a 25 to 50% decrease in inorganic arsenic in the rice, and that which is the most toxic form of arsenic. So right away, just by putting these materials to the soil, we can make the plants healthier and alter the toxic form of arsenic that's in the grain, and it's directly implicated in health issues. Being a silica-rich material, it's important for reducing the amount of arsenic in the rice plant because the mechanism for uptake is arsenite. It's the most dominant form of arsenic in flooded rice paddies. The finding was published in a paper, okay, blah, blah, blah. Although she has done research with synthetic fertilizers that showed promise, it wasn't until she went to Cambodia. So the vastness of rice paddies and how much rice residue is being generated from the production of rice globally that she wanted to explore how to use these materials better. Now in Cambodia and many other rice growing regions, the plants are grown in soil, and when they're harvested, they remove the straw and all of the above ground portion, so they leave the rice in place, but most of the silica is in the straw and also in the husk. When the rice comes right off the plant, it's encased in a husk material. And when that gets removed and back into the ground, the left off husk has a lot of silicon. This material is just put up in piles. We're talking about rice recycling. We're talking about recycling right now. When I saw these, she saw how these husks were being left around. She said, well, let's put them to use. In the natural environment, these silica rice tissues would get reincorporated where the rice is grown. The tissue could be removed, and we can get involved. This is talking about not only removing arsenic, but also recycling what these leftover rice husks. Okay. So we're talking about recycling. Justin's here. I didn't see it. You snuck up on me.
Oh, you left the door open again, Ed.
There we go.
You left the door open, so I just walked in.
The door is always open. Hey, I don't even lock the door to my condo. You can come over, just walk right into the condo. Don't know if you want to do that, but you can. Oh, boy. Excuse me. I've been rambling away, and now I got somebody who can help me talk about these stories.
All right. What do you got? What's the story we're talking about?
Two of the main things we talked about was solar energy. The power companies putting roadblocks in the way of individuals using solar power.
Right.
Got this stupid system where they have meters and stuff, and it's just not working. What they're doing in San Antonio, Texas, the power company there, we can rent out our rooftops. And this is also a big deal for people who can't afford solar panel. You rent out your rooftop, the energy company puts up the solar panels. The solar panels then go through an inverter, and part of it goes to yourself to use the home. The other part of it goes into the solar power grid, makes it more stable, makes a lot of sense at a lot of levels.
Yes. But the power companies don't like this. It's not the power companies who are selling typically. I don't know. Maybe it is in this case, but what's been going on is, okay, this is that scenario, right? Ed, you and I decide we're going to build our own solar power plant. So we purchase 50 acres, and we put our solar panels up there, right? And now we need to sell it. So now we got to contact the power companies and say, hey, we have 50 acres of solar panels that we've invested in and put up, and we want to sell you the energy that comes from them, right? And they go, well, you've got 50 acres of solar panels? That's nothing. That's a drop in the bucket to the energy consumption of this region. Look, we might be interested in picking up your little power trickle that you've got coming off there, but it's going to have to be 50% of the wholesale cheapest energy that we've ever bought at any peak point or low point in energy demand, okay? So we're quickly doing the math on our calculators and realizing we've made a terrible investment, Ed. We're losing money every day because they're buying our energy so cheaply. So solar panel companies realize that's not how you do this. How we do it is we're going to give our solar panels away for free. We're going to give them away as a free lease. All you have to provide is a rooftop that faces south or has enough sunlight. And we'll put the roof panels up there. We'll put the solar panels on there. We'll install them for free. We'll sign a 20-year contract with you. And you're going to get a 30% reduction in your power bill. And you didn't even have to put up $1. All you got to do is sign some paperwork. Sounds like a fantastic deal. And the reason forward, of course, is those solar panel manufacturers who like us. This is us. We would have loved to have our solar panels out in the field catching sunlight, but we have to sell it at below wholesale to get anybody's attention. Now, on that roof in residential, as it dials back their meter, that's credited at full retail, not wholesale, not sub-wholesale, not any kind of price that needs to get marked up, but at complete and total full end of the line retail, right? So the reason the power companies don't like it, they're saying, hey, wait a second. When we buy power, only half of it, 70% to half of it actually arrives at its destination. It's lost through the transmission. So that's got to be factored in. Plus, all the power lines go down when the wind blows in the storm, and we got people out there, and we got helicopters sometimes flying around testing lines. We have a huge overhead. You can't charge us full retail. That's not fair either. So they've been creating laws across our country to try to either limit this practice of leasing for free or charging a surcharge. So yes, you're going to reduce your bill by 35%, but it's going to come with a flat $40 or $80 or whatever they determined fee for having those panels up there, because you have to somehow contribute to the rest of their grid and infrastructure that they built and maintain. So arguments are strong on both sides. But currently, those laws are playing catch up because there's solar panels going on roofs for free with these leases all across the country, and there's some major marketing as well as sales and installation going on to get them in place. But that's that dilemma. That's the arguments being made by both sides. One is, hey, this is solar panels on their property, and if we're not using electricity, we can't get charged for it. And if we're dialing back the meter, that electricity that goes back out to the grid is feeding that local community at retail. So we should get credited at retail, because that's how the only way that we have to measure it is whether the dial is this way or that way, right? So that's that whole scenario in a nutshell.
Yeah, the key thing here is, well, the energy companies, their models gonna get broken. It's gonna go away sooner or later. As soon as we get that better battery, as soon as we get that more efficient solar energy panel, everybody's gonna get. I mean, why bother? Everybody's gonna have their own grid. It's inevitable. So here you've got. I mean, if like in San Antonio, and I think even when, for the rest of us who can afford solar panel technology, you're still going to have lower income people. Can't afford it.
Well,
can't afford to rent it. But what they can do,
right. But wait, and again though, if you own the property, if you're lower income and you're renting, none of this will ever matter. Okay, so you got to own the property, and you can. There's companies out there that will put the solar panels on your roof for free. They will not charge you to install them. They will not charge you to maintain them. You won't have to pay a monthly rent. You'll get a reduction in your bill. They're going to collect on the retail difference of what they've supplied, right? And back to the grid, what they've turned back. Your 35% reduction, maybe they're making 70% of or twice as much as you're saving, right? It could be pretty decent.
You're a genius with numbers. That's exactly right.
Is that the exact right number? Okay. So and then they've got their installations up. They're getting paid more than they would if they tried to just be a supplier, right? And I don't think the power companies go away. I think actually if the midterm view of this is the power companies say they lose 30% of their business, of their energy supply to this. They still have the infrastructure that's there and that needs to be maintained. So maybe the rates go up. And who do the rates go up on? The lower income who don't own the property, who are just paying whatever the grid is, because the landlord doesn't care what they pay for utilities. Now, on the other hand, there's got to be some argument made for, well, you're buying and supplying, and this is actually augmenting how much you need to supply. California is a beautiful example. This was the Enron scandal, where the Enron was having transmission plants shut down the supply of electricity to California. There were rolling blackouts, and when there's rolling blackouts, the local power companies are buying out-of-state energy at a premium because there's now a supply and demand problem. So they pay a lot of extra money to provide electricity in those crazy peak times. So really, you could say this is a buffer against those peak times. Everywhere in America is growing. Everywhere in America is going to need more and more energy. So you would think that the energy companies might welcome the fact that, like, hey, we still really are growing the business because more people, more houses, more electricity is being used. And this is going to slow the pace at which we need to increase the energy supply, which you would think would take pressure off of them, and they'd be thankful for it. Gosh, if we could still be supplying the energy that we needed to supply in 1980 here in 2020, then that seems like that would be a much easier job for them. But obviously the devil is in those details of what's getting charged and rolled back and what have you.
It's got to be economically feasible for both the energy company and the customer. Mm-hmm. It's got to be both.
Right.
I think, well, for instance, in California, earlier story I read, in California, I think it's your governor says they want all homes to be energy neutral by 2020. Mm-hmm. That is, all homes producing enough electricity, that producing all the electricity that they use.
That seems that's in 4 years. That seems
okay.
So Jerry Brown is very progressive on these issues. But new home construction, I think they're at the point where they're going to require solar installation to be part of new home construction. Certainly in some cities that seems to be taking place. Another is, of course, dual pane windows is a standard. If you buy and plan to rent a building, you have to take out the old windows and put in dual pane and do a sort of weather stripping or weatherizing of the property. So the new building codes are stricter in this sense.
Yeah, and I'm trying to look for I talked about California, but I'm not finding it. Yeah, 4 years does sound a pretty short period of time. Yeah, I can't find it. I can't find the piece. I'm sure there's some sort of
Jerry Brown. Always smiles and never frown. The hippies won't come back, you say. Mellow out or you will pay. Mellow out or you. That's a Dead Kennedy song.
You're always going to need a power grid, I think.
Yeah.
The power grid, at the very least, is going to be a backup. Okay. Somebody's got to pay to maintain that backup, so there'll be some kind of a fee. You'll be getting your solar energy, but then you always want your backup.
Always.
And the energy company is going to charge you, I don't know. Well, in some places, they want like $50 or some ridiculous amount of money.
Right.
Even though you don't use any electricity, you want to hook up to the grid, you pay us $50. So it's got to be cost effective.
Yeah.
But that's what it's got to be.
Well, and the thing is too, I feel like the stick in this, I mean, that's that they're forcing a carrot for themselves onto this scenario, right? They want their carrot to be, if you're going to be connected, you've got to pay $50. It's a forced carrot. It's hardly a reward system. That's kind of a stick. But the real stick to this should be at the power companies. Hey, why didn't you think of this? If this is such a detrimental cost to you, why didn't you offer this? Why aren't you in this business? If there's a big profit to be made by putting solar panels on people's roofs and for free and reaping the cost benefit from that, then why wouldn't you have done that as an energy company in the first place? Because if it doesn't make sense to you to do this in order to save that electricity and to save it at full retail and to dial it back to your local neighborhoods at full retail, then you shouldn't be in a position to charge for it because you didn't think that was a winning proposition. Why aren't you involved in this? So there's There's some real interesting things, and the reason they're not interested, of course, is because they're already making all of that money. And what these ingenious entrepreneurs of the free solar leasing industry have done is they've found a way to earn some of what was the electric company's profits already. And that's why the electric companies didn't do that, because they're already making all of that money.
Yeah, I found the article that it says the official goal is for California homes to be that energy efficient or whatever, net neutral in 2020. That's the goal. Now, there's no, penalty, I guess, if you don't reach the goal, but at least that's the goal.
You got to have goals in life.
So, what's happened? Well, the power companies are forcing us to go to that goal. Me, what the heck do I know? What do I care? I pay my power bill. I don't think anything about it. Okay. Power company says, you know what, Ed? We're going to jump your power bill 20% in 1 year. 20% in 1 year. Now, all of a sudden, they say, let me take a look at how I'm using my electricity, right? They were getting like $100 a month from me. I cut back. I did this. I'm paying $25 less a month now than I was before because I'm more conscious. You know what I actually do? I turn off the lights when I'm not using them. I go to light bulbs that are more energy efficient. So they're forcing us to become more and more efficient, to eventually become self-sufficient. They're going to put themselves out of business.
Well, but then, the other thing is we're going to go to the electric cars. So all this energy that's oil is going to be cars, and gas stations will go away because you can put these things everywhere. Right? You can put it at the restaurant. You can have it at your house. You can have it at work. You can have it maybe even somehow while driving in traffic.
Oh, yeah. Well, eventually we're going to have that nationwide power state, the gas stations, not the gas stations, solar energy stations, eventually. And there's resistance to it. In some states, it's going to happen more quickly than other states. Just like Elon Musk. I mean, they had the charging stations where you could change batteries in 5 minutes. They don't do it anymore. Probably costs too much money, so it takes a half an hour. Nobody's going to go into a gas station and wait half an hour.
Right, but you won't need to, right?
But,
that's the thing.
Yes.
You'll if you go to that restaurant you like, and at the end of every parking space will be a charging station. If you go to the grocery store, you'll plug in. Actually, the Target store in town here has, I think it's only got like 4 stations right now, but it's got 4 plug-in stations that you could just plug into while you're there shopping at their, for your toiletries or socks or whatever you buy at Target, right? So this is already starting to pop up great places, and it's only going to get better. The car dealership I work at, they've got a plug-in station there for the very few plug-in vehicles we've ever produced. I think 2, but it's there. If somebody comes in and wants to visit parts or is going to get an oil change or something, they can also plug in that car for a little while and get it charged up.
Okay, what about this? Well, apps, computers apps, smartphone apps, whatever, devices in our house we can use for monitoring just about everything, including electric use. Trying to come up with a segue here. And so this is it's actually augmented reality. An augmented reality device. Ever heard of Tango?
Mm-mm. Like the dance?
No. Oh, this is Tango. This is Google. This is a Google project. Now, let me try and do the old screen share thing here. Okay, here we go. All right, this is Tango. See, there you go. There's your little smartphone. It can look all around. It can create a new environment for you if you wanted to. Genius, right? Okay. Let's see. Smartphone got to be more clever. Okay, Lenovo will give customers their first chance to buy a phone featuring Google's Project Tango, an attempt to embed, I don't know,
Imbue.
Something like that, imbue, with a better understanding of what's around them. We're going to make these more intelligent. Okay, location tracking through GPS and cell towers tells apps where you are, but not much more than that. No. Tango uses software and sensors to track motion, size up the contours of the room, empowering Lenovo's new phone to map building interiors, a crucial building block to a promising new frontier of augmented reality. Way better than real reality, okay?
So you know what this is? This is just all going to update directly to Google Maps, which already has like interiors. Like this was a sort of interesting thing in visiting New York the first time was we could check out the bars and the restaurants in the area we'd be staying because they had not just the regular street view, but you could like walk into a number of the locations. And they had 360 views of the restaurant or the bar or the cafe or whatever it was. But now we can have this of everybody's house.
Well, it's more than that with this new device, and I haven't looked at it. I have no idea. It's going to be coming out. It went out this morning or something, supposedly on a test basis. But what you're talking about is you get this little device. It's like virtual reality. It's kind of the same sort of thing, because except without the clunky headset. They got to get rid of the clunky headset, right?
It's a little
okay. Rough. So basically, the way I read it is, you've got this device. You got to hold up your smartphone or your whatever the heck it happens to be. You can look through it and you can visualize. Okay, where do I want the sofa to go? I can visualize the sofa actually fitting in that space. Ooh, yeah. And of course, let's say you got a school kid. You put up the little device, the school kid looks at it, and what do you have? You got dinosaurs in your room. How neat is that, right? So
there's already, if in Snapchat, is it Snap? Yeah, Snapchat has a bunch of these sort of things. It's got a facial recognition deal. But it can superimpose different face. It can turn you into a koala bear or a dog or a demon, or like it has all these things that create this instantaneous sort of animation. Yeah, the future of all this sort of virtual reality is interesting in ways that it's going to be able to be used.
Now, okay, if you put on our tinfoil hat. The only slight problem with this giving all this information.
Oh, I made a casserole the other night. Oh, shoot.
Oh, well, you're out of luck. The NSA is going to know everything you're thinking about. Too bad. But you look at all this information these devices are taking in. So you leave, like your Apple TV, you can leave it on. You can leave it on if you want. You can walk in and say, turn on or something like that, and it goes on. Because it's on all the time. Now, of course, they're not really interested in knowing what you're doing all the time. Of course not. Okay, we got this minor case where the FBI is suing. They don't want warrants. Okay, you know where I'm going with this thing. All this information, because these devices, they need information so they can help us out. So, you know, how far can it go? How much you can trust?
Yeah. So yeah, and here's the biggest problem in the trust, and this is a great subject. Snowden. Is it Edward Snowden? It's another Ed. You should know. Don't all you Eds know each other?
It's Edward.
It's Edward Snowden.
All my childhood, I heard 2 Eds are better than 1 because I had a friend named Ed.
So Edward Snowden looked at abuse of government access to information and made several attempts through the internal channels to bring attention to it. No action, no reaction, and then went public and is now wanted for treason by the United States, right? Even though Eric Holder, head of the Department of Justice, says, you know, actually what he did was a really good service and got the conversation going. Well, no, he didn't just get the conversation started. That's absolute BS. He brought attention to abuse of private information, of using electronic information like you're describing, that information that feeds the machinery. He pointed out the abuse of it. So, you know, you're right. There is a reason for caution. There is a reason for the tinfoil hat. One of the things that's remarkable to me, and it's because we don't have a champion lobby for privacy. And you know, as much as I wish somebody like a Google or a Facebook would stand up for privacy rights, because it could also benefit them and their data gathering. The NRA. I'll back up a second. Privacy rights. You have privacy. Nobody can read your mail or enter your home without the warrant, right? But this is old. This is old. Now they're going to say, well, but if you sent an email, it went out into the world, it's now accessible information. It's not the same as mail in an envelope. It's on public servers. My goodness. Your text messages, they go through a third-party company. That's not your property. Therefore, we can read it. They find all these caveats. The NRA forever holds on to, with their cold, dead fingers, the Second Amendment, which is, you know, it's the Second Amendment. It's an amendment. It's the Second Amendment, the right to bear arms. When that was written, arms were, you would put a bullet or I don't know what they called it, a stone of metal, and then you'd pack it up like, oh yeah, you said what? I'm gonna I just gotta put a little more powder in here. You know, kept it dry. Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, I'm really mad at you, and I'm gonna let you know. Oh, that's what you meant. Oh my gosh. Oh, good thing you told me. I totally was misunderstanding. Sorry about that. Now a gun, an arm, can fire 30 rounds in 5 seconds. That's not the same thing. The technology of what a gun or an arm is defined as has radically changed, even though the verbiage of the amendment has not, right? So that's an example of technology outpacing a certain right. And yet we still have the right to bear arms. The right to privacy should, I think, at least, in all fairness, be maintained throughout all technological advancements of what is privacy and what is information. So, and maybe I'm making an argument for the NRA, but yeah, you should, if it's on, even if it's on Facebook and you weren't a friend and it wasn't public, you shouldn't be able to use that in a warrantless search. Your text messages, your phone records, these sorts of things. However, the other flip side of this, of course, is how many murderers have been caught across this country because they said they were nowhere near the scene of the crime, but the triangulation of their cell phone put them right there. You know, and in each one of those cases, you say, yes, use the information. But of course, I think you need a warrant for that, right? You have to have the interest. So, okay, yes, so you still need a warrant to get that information. So we still need, I don't think it's bad to have information that's trackable. Not being a criminal, I find that fine. I don't find it okay that information can be viewed without a warrant.
Yeah, and first is, we need to have the ability, when we're talking about all these devices, to opt out. I don't have to download the app. And it's got to be a situation where, like Facebook, I can say to Facebook, don't do this, whatever this is, don't do this, don't collect this information. You got to be able to opt out. Now, when you're talking about the right to privacy, I was feeling pretty comfortable about the courts until that California case where the judge said, okay, FBI, you know what? You don't really need a warrant.
Yeah.
That just blew my mind. Now that's a totally different situation. As long as you can say you need that warrant, and a judge sits there and looks at the case.
Wait. Okay, hold on, back up.
Go ahead.
I missed it first. So, what California case where they don't need a warrant?
You know that where they wanted to get into the guy's cell phone.
Is this the terrorist people?
No, not terrorist. This is a crook. This is criminal. I forget what kind of a crime. It was a criminal case, and it was cracked. They had the guy's phone. They couldn't get into it.
Yeah.
They couldn't get into the guy's phone, and so they wanted to compel Apple to break it.
So this is
that
the only
was
one
part
of the
case.
The only case I'm familiar with like this was that terrorist case. That was the one that was really public. Was the San Bernardino shooters?
Let me see. I'm gonna use Google. I'm gonna tell Google
other examples of this where they've asked, and I don't. There is something to the right to privacy, and I'm torn. Like the San Bernardino killers. That was a terrorist act. They murdered innocent people, and there could be crucial information on that phone. And because there is no paper, it's not like they're going to go and find their letters in the drawer of the desk, right? I don't know why I'm using a fake old Englishy accent for that. The information trail these days is going to be electronic, so I understand why we would want to be able to get a warrant and search a phone, even though it's, supposedly uncrackable. And I do both want the privacy, and I don't want these phones to be, as soon as you allow somebody the key to the back door, the key's going to get out, right? And then everybody's information can be accessed.
Yeah, I can't find the case, but there was this one case, and it had to do with maybe a drug dealer or something. Mm-hmm. And what it came down to is the judge ruled that the police did not need a warrant. And they ruled, now this is a circuit court judge. Mm-hmm. It'll go to the Supreme Court. Who the heck's going to be the next judge that'll make the decision to the Supreme Court? Big question. But big difference. Local judges can be absolute. What's a wingnut? They can be extremely stupid, or they can be. I don't want to say stupid. That's not fair. They can be very far from the legal consensus on these things. A judge can be. Local judge can be, and that's why we have higher courts that you can then push that to, who can say, okay, no, the reason I became a state judge or state Supreme Court judge or Supreme Court of the nation judge is because I've shown that I'm very prudent, not necessarily with the consensus on everything, but that I have very respected opinions that are based on law. I guess at least that's what we hope and assume. Yeah, that's what I'm looking for. We need, as you said, a voice for privacy.
Yeah.
We got to have, and we're not, I don't think there is a voice for privacy right now in Congress. Not enough.
Not in Congress, but there is in Russia right now. His name is Edward Snowden. And he was the one voice that spoke loudest about this. There were NSA officers or agents, I guess, within the NSA who looked at some of the programs and voiced a lot of concerns about them, and got drummed out of the agency. they got investigations put to them. I mean, it was really like that sort of thin, not thin blue line, but it was as though they were targeted because they'd spoken out against the uses or perhaps abuses of this personal information.
Yeah. Excuse me. We're drifting into politics, which is fine, but that's why it's going to be so important. You know, who makes that? But you know, the thing is, I'm beginning. I used to be very optimistic about the courts. I'm beginning to drift a little bit away towards being pessimistic, and I'm doing that because all of our presidents, there's a trend, and I mean, Obama's been doing it. He's in charge of the FBI, so you got the FBI suing for all these cases where they don't want to have to come up with a warrant. He's in charge of the FBI. Clinton thinks like he does. She gets elected. She's going to continue that trend. I'm getting a little pessimistic, but
well, and okay, but it's become their job. So if there's another 9/11 type event, whoever is president will be blamed for not having reacted on the possibility of the information being there, but somehow mishandled. You know, there's that Ben Franklin, and this might be a fake quote, but if I give up liberty and defense, if I give up liberty so that I may have security, then in the end I have neither. Something along these lines, right? He might not have ever said it. People attribute, like, half the Ben Franklin quotes you've ever heard are just somebody decided to make it up. So it is. I do understand if your job is to be protector in chief, you want to use everything at your disposal to get to the bad guys. And if you feel like you're the good guy, then the good people don't have to worry about if I got a little into this email or that text message or the other thing, right? Problem is this ability to access information. It's not like the president sits up all night, you know, reading people's emails. It's delegated. And it's delegated to the NSA. And the NSA is worried about foreign threats. They're not worried about domestic threats. So that should be okay. But then, you know, there's a good reason for the FBI to have some access to this. And they're looking for the internal threats. So then they're looking at more domestic criminals, and you know, some civilians who aren't criminals get caught up into the connections, and so they might get looked at accidentally. But really, to really have eyes where they need to be focused, you know, rubber on the road, you need local police enforcement to have some ability to track cell phone usages and these things that can mimic a tower and then collect text messages. I can't remember what the thing is called. It's not Carnivore. It's some other stupid predator name device that they've been utilizing. And then, well, it turns out that a police officer was using it against his ex-wife during a divorce, or maybe there was a police officer who had reported to internal investigations the actions of another police officer, and suddenly they discovered it's been used on her. So as soon as you unlock this thing, it trickles down and it becomes utilized by individuals who may have, you know, ulterior motives to it. And then the hacker community is always proven to be much more apt at utilizing and accessing this technology than anybody ever expects when they invent it, right? So yeah, it's a world that we need to be cautious of. Really, we could all toss away our cell phones. We could not be connected to the internet. We could. We won't. Even if we knew that there was a room full of people who did nothing all day but read our texts, we probably would still text people, right? Like, we'd still like, I don't care. You read this.
yeah,
I would.
You have a good point. I think when I think of, I say one, the young kids. The young kids today, they're going to do something about privacy. Well, you know what they're going to do? They're going to figure out how to circumvent it. They're not going to worry about the FBI. They're going to figure out how to circumvent everything. Like Snapchat, I think. I never even heard of it. I got no idea what it is. There are now more Snapchat users than there are Facebook users.
Oh, wow. That's wild.
That's our kids.
I use it, and I'm not a kid. So this is the thing. It's not just the kids, and we're, at first at least I was
Come on, that 30-second selfie, the wife in the shower. Come on.
Well, I did get a couple of those. Actually, and I didn't really use it until my wife started using it, and she uses it a lot, and she creates these little picture stories throughout the day, and they're hilarious. But it's another way of being in contact. It's another way of instead of texting, it'll be a photo montage of things instead of an email. Like who emails anymore? I don't know the last time I sent somebody an email. Why would I bother? I don't have that much to say. I'll just send you a text.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right.
Text you. Right?
Let me interrupt you for a second because we've got our friend FX in the chat room. We're talking about Benjamin Franklin quotes. Now, he's quoting Benjamin Franklin. Pizza in the morning, pizza in the evening, pizza in supper time. I don't remember hearing that.
No. Actually, so Benjamin Franklin invented pizza. We think of it as an Italian thing, but there were no tomatoes in Italy at the time. Tomatoes were a New World discovery. So yeah, Benjamin Franklin. That some say this may have led to his early demise because he did go to and it's one of the lesser known things he's known for was the all pizza diet.
It must be true, Justin, because I trust you.
Yeah, it may have led to his demise. Also, so could have, he had like multiple syphilis infections.
Probably half the people in the world had syphilis infections at that point. I don't think they used condoms all that much.
Yeah, unless you could find a good old fashioned girl with gonorrhea, you're gonna get syphilis. Yeah. Okay, I've gotta go, but I'm not leaving for good. I'll be right back. Okay,
I've got a real neat story next. We can talk about farming without farmers. Okay.
Okay.
I'll engage the chat room. Yeah. FX. It's a complicated, valid point, yet I don't think that should be used to avoid coming to agreement in how and when. About an hour ago. Okay. It's okay. A trend, I'm hoping, can be a little convoluted. Going to circle the wagons here, but more people are becoming independents. They're not becoming Republicans. They're not signing up as Democrats. They're signing up as independents. And I think these are the people that support people like Bernie Sanders. I think Bernie Sanders is more interested in things like privacy, restricting the power of the government. And that's what I think you're seeing. I think that trend towards more and more people becoming independents is a trend of more and more people not wanting to sign up for either the Republican or the Democratic Party. I think you're going to see, you have the Trump people. A lot of them, libertarians, don't agree with everything they say, but one of the things they're concerned about is people having individual power, less power to the government. So you got a lot of libertarians, and a lot of them support Donald Trump. On the other side, you got Bernie Sanders. A lot of independents supporting Bernie Sanders on the left. And the left is also concerned about the power of the government. So I think it's going to take a while, but I think the power of the government is going to become more and more of an issue, and more people are going to support those congressmen that are more interested in protecting our rights. They're going to question the power of the government. I think that's a trend. It's going to take a little time. I don't know. I did read an article about an individual working for, he was a contractor or something, and he looked at, I think it was the NSA, and he looking for abuses of power within the NSA by the analyst. And his comment, he couldn't talk about details, but his comment was, what he found was that there were very few abuses of power. Take it for what it's worth. So if you have a president that at least is more concerned with possible abuses of the NSA, then that's going to filter down into the agencies themselves. I don't know, that case, and I don't have the details, I've forgotten it, but it was a California case recently, within the last month or two, and it involved the FBI wanting to gain access to, I think it might have been cell phone data without a warrant. And the judge, now the wording of the agreement, this is a circuit court judge. This was not a local judge. This is a circuit court judge just below the Supreme Court. And he said that because when customers signed into the agreement with the cell phone companies, they're agreeing to allow the cell phone companies to give access of that information. So it had to do with the contracts that we users sign when we buy our cell phones and things, when we get our cell phone contracts. It had to do with the language in the contract, and the judge interpreting that language to mean that we have basically agreed to give up our rights to privacy because of that language in the contract. It was very specific wording, and I'm sure it's going to go to the Supreme Court. So that's why our next Supreme Court justice is really going to be very important. I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. I have a political group on Facebook. We do a lot of discussions. I used to be a Democrat. I'm no longer a Democrat. I'm now an independent. And the other people are saying, okay, why don't you support Clinton as opposed to Trump? I'm going for the Green Party. And one of the things I said is that on the important issues to be meaning the growing power of the federal government through the NSA, through what the FBI wants. That's a trend that's happening under Obama. That's going to be a trend that's going to continue under Clinton. I'm not going to vote for Clinton until I feel that, yes, she is going to do something to mitigate, lessen the power of the NSA, the power of the government to spy on us. Because I don't think she will. So that's one, and I'm not going to vote for a person like that. So I'm voting for the Green Party, who I more agree with. I think you're going to see more. It's going to be interesting. How many people opt? It's going to be hard the way our election process is set up. When you have that ballot, I believe in my state of Connecticut, they'll have the Libertarian Party on the ballot. They'll have the Green Party on the ballot. May not be the case in every single state. And where it's not the case, you're kind of stuck. You got, if you go write-in, in a lot of places, they don't even count it. You know, the register at the polling station, they put it aside, they don't even count it. So we've got to change the way our election process. We've got to allow independents to vote in all the primaries so they have a voice in the two major candidates. We've got to allow write-in ballots to be counted everywhere, and they aren't now. If I knew that my write-in ballot would be counted, I might write in Bernie Sanders. I've got to have some way of expressing my dissatisfaction to the process. I don't know. I think it's going to get better. Justin is back in time. Just in time.
I just made an offer on a condo.
Ooh. Okay, now, did you look? I live in a condo. I'm thrilled with living in my condo.
Yeah.
Do you know what the association rights are? What your rights are under the rules of the
No idea. No idea. Don't care. If they take my offer, it's well worth living with it.
Oh, yeah.
So I was looking at, this is totally off the, no, this is sort of Science Islandy. I was looking at a half an acre, a half an hour away, that had a bigger dwelling and enough land, a giant 1,200 square foot metal barn already on the property, and enough land to do some farming and gardening and all sorts of amenities that I really, really, really liked. But even though it's only a half an hour away, there's a convenience factor to being in town, which is undeniable. So ultimately, these two places were going to cost the same monthly, and I opted for convenience. I must admit. So
that's exactly what I did.
Yeah.
My job moved. So I bought this condo was available. It was 5 minutes from where I live as opposed to an hour commute.
Yeah.
Kind of a no-brainer. The thing is, one thing, how many people are in your association? Do you have any idea?
Over
100?
Oh gosh, yeah. It's like 500.
Okay. That's about what we have. I don't know what the heck you can do, and maybe you don't even have to worry about it, but what you guys do is you hire a property manager.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, all those common charges, you give that money to the property manager, and the property manager takes care of the property. Okay. I was on the board of directors for the first 10 years. I wanted to see that statement. I wanted to see, okay, property manager, show me where you're spending the money. I had to print out, whole big deal. Okay, I got tired. The other people are yelling, and all they do once they know you're on the board is they yell and scream at you. Okay, I quit. Next, they got a new property manager. Guess what he did? Okay, $9 for the association, $1 for me.
Oh, well, that's
and all of a sudden, and then he said, okay, you know what we can do is take this money. Now, if they need something new, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give them a loan, and I'm going to charge them 15%. I don't know, whatever it was. We wound up with a $600,000 deficit in our budget. We had to pay a $2,000 assessment apiece to make up for that deficit. Don't want to scare you. Just something to think about.
Okay. So I do or don't ever want to be on this board.
No.
I want to be the property manager so I can take 10%.
Oh, that's good.
Scam. Yeah. Okay. That's what I'll do. I'm working on my real estate license now. And then I'll get hired to be the property manager of the condos that I'm paying to. Oh, yeah. This could really. Yeah, I see it now.
Okay. I got this neat story I want to get to. And you have this picture. Okay, a farm. You're a farmer on a dairy farm. Okay. Now, all right, you got to get up at 5:30 in the morning. You got to milk the cow. You got to do all this work. The cows. The cows got to get up at 5:30 in the morning
Oh,
and
cows hate
sit
that.
there. Yeah, they hate that. And they got to sit there, and they got some human, playing with their teats and all the whole business. All right. Now you got these brothers. You got these brothers in Australia, and they put together this little farm. And the cows wander around. They just go around and chill out. And then if they feel like getting milk, they wander into the old farm, the old barn, and they kind of walk up and get hooked up to this little milking machine. And the milking machine takes care of them. And they can do it anytime. And the guy who owns the farm, he just sits back and collect the money, because all of this is done by robots. It's robots that monitor the cows. The robots keep track of how often the cows are getting milked. The machines are robotic machines that do all the milking and all this other stuff.
So farmers sleeping until 10. Nice.
Doesn't that sound like genius?
That's great.
We got this minor problem of the farm workers becoming unemployed. Minor problem.
Well, okay. Yeah, that is a problem. Although, I don't know if that's, well, it depends on whose problem you're advocating. This is the problem of automation in general. This is that problem. It's the idea that the dream of the 50s. Nah, forget about the flying cars. That's ridiculous. That's not going to happen. But self-driving cars, hey, that's not that far off, and it's a great compromise, right? The other is the automation. You'll have a robot. You'll have an automated home that will clean your clothes and press your clothes and cook your dinners, and you won't have to do all that tedious housework anymore. But that's not really what happened. What happened was that wherever you went to work in the morning, you didn't come back to the house that took care of itself. You just lost your job because there's a robot that does your job now. And this is the and in farming, large percentage of the jobs in farming is immigration, and it's would affect somebody else or another country's income, really much more than it would affect the United States. But those are still people who need jobs, and that's why they're working in the fields here in the United States. So, but what the point of all this automation, the direction it takes us, is to one where, I mean, even where accountants, I can, instead of going down and sitting across from a person to do my taxes, I can do it with a robot online. I can do it with the template. I mean, there's almost no segment of the economy where there's a job that can't be at some point replaced. Oh, you can't replace your doctor. Well, they're basically a good troubleshooter, and you may be able to create something even with a better bedside manner than the doctor you're seeing now. What this leads us to, though, is only one option to maintain a society where 50% of the jobs today are gone in 20 years. And that means you have to have a socialist economy. Because people won't all be able to work. People won't all have this sort of capitalist ability to go out, earn your way in your segment of whatever it is, because there is no job. There just isn't the job, whatever it is you do now, whatever that job is, bot takes that job tomorrow. Yeah, you can switch careers, but you know what? 4 or 5 other segments also disappeared that same day your job disappeared. So now there's, instead of 5%, there's 12% unemployment. And those people are all going after that next job that you're going to have to start from scratch, entry level, learn the job, work your way up. And then as soon as you got that job and you've been there for 10 years and you think you know what's going on, a robot takes that job too, right? So we need to come up with an economy that's not just all service jobs. We're all just serving each other lunch, preparing each other's dinners, and doing each other's laundry, because even those jobs could go away. So at some point, we have to realize work cannot be the driver of economy. If you get to the point where you've got that much automation, work isn't the economy, and it has to then start turning into entitlement. It has to start turning into quota or ratio or some other way of giving that economic means to be in this world. So it's scary to come from a successful capitalist country and look to a future where that work won't work anymore, or that ethic won't apply anymore. And I've sort of have felt for a long time that things like the safety nets, things like Social Security, things like welfare, things like even things like a GI Bill and whatever the entitlements are, those are going to Medicare, right? Or Medicaid. These things are going to have to expand to more and more of us as work becomes less and less a thing that we actually engage in on a daily basis. And it's and there is a vision of this. There is a futuristic envisioning of what this would look like. It's called Star Trek. People paid with credits, but they notice nobody really had expenses, really. Like it's not like I never saw somebody walk up to the replicator and go, boop boop, nah, boop boop, nah. Oh, I'm out of credits. I can't eat today, right? Like, no, it was a completely socialized future where money wasn't really a factor anymore. To at least if you were, aboard a starship or whatever.
Yeah,
I still try to figure out how the Ferengi was making money on Deep Space Nine. Like, you're on a starship full of Federation where they don't really seem to conduct business and they all seem to have a socialized economy. What kind of quidbits are you hoarding that you're spending somewhere else from the Federation if they're all just sort of on a voucher program? I never really understood that.
I don't know. It's just saving credits, probably for something totally illegal from the society, like the whiskey or whatever the heck.
Right. But you've got a replicator. This is the thing. It's like, make me whatever the heck I want. Some crazy dish. Boom, there it is. Right?
Advertiser's gonna be there. The advertiser's gonna be there and say, we got the original Martian wine. None of that phony stuff you get out of the replicator. Yeah. Give us $5,000 and we'll give you this bottle of original. None of that organic nonsense. None of that unhealthy. Come on, people are people, right? You got to know that.
Yeah, I've met them. I understand that they exist. I believe it.
All right, that word I love thinking about it. Mm-hmm. Impossible to think about it because it's going to be so different. You're 100% correct. Our system has got to evolve because, it isn't going to be people going to work to make money to pay for. That's not going to work anymore. You're exactly right. Robots increasingly can do just about anything. They can't create, I don't think. And I don't think they'll ever have the creative power of the human brain. I don't believe in this ultimate AI people are talking about. But the dumb machine can do just about anything any human being can do because it can process information, bazillion pieces of information, and it can be programmed to do anything. So you're exactly right. Those jobs are going to go away. You got that formula, government formula, X coming in, X going out. Now, if individuals can make things for themselves somehow, so you're going into a situation.
3D printer,
so you're going into a situation where I don't have to buy this stuff. Then you're in that situation you're talking about. Mm-hmm. You don't have to buy this stuff anymore. So the government runs something, and I use that something, and I pay the government some money, and they use that money to pay for my life insurance or whatever the heck it happens to be. It's has to evolve to something like that.
Yeah, well, I mean, even the entire concept of paying for something, you know, and there's a major downside to this. You know, part of why the economy of the United States, I think, took off and has thrived. There's a lot of reasons, but it has a lot to do with democracy. We didn't just in the United States didn't just invent democracy. It didn't. It pre-existed in various forms. But we wanted the entire government to be based on democracy. But we also went with a very capitalist society, and it's a fantastic marriage when done right. You know, it's sort of like the moments of the revolution are always the greatest at the overthrow of the old regime. But then you got to figure out how to set up your own bureaucracy, right? That's when things can sort of downslide a little bit. When you sort of work out the details of like, oh gosh, we had all these great ideals. Now we have to implement them. What's that going to look like? Nobody ever figured that out yet. But one of the big things versus systems previous was the ability to take earnings from whatever your job was and apply them to the world any way that you like. So, for instance, you were going back in the time machine. You worked for the king. Well, you worked on your farm, but it wasn't your farm. It was the king's farm. And so everything you grew on the king's farm was really the property of the king. And you got to keep some coin in your pocket, and you might even get taxed on the coin in your pocket that you kept from working the king's land. And the land was granted to you by the king. You didn't actually own it, right? So there was all these different layers of you just actually work for the king, as does everybody. Maybe you work for the local baron or what have you, but even he works for the king then. You know, it's not even, it's the land he's living on isn't actually his, but it's still the king's land. And the idea with this democracy and capitalism is like, okay, so I can take the profits from my work and my efforts and my farm, which I own and nobody has right to set foot on, and nobody can take away from me. And I can take these funds and I can buy a different farm somewhere else. Or I can spend them on nothing, or I can build whatever structure I want. Nobody can take this from me. So there was this whole mobility with this finances, which is that you actually owned it. And what did you own when you own money? You own a contract. What's that contract? It's a social contract. The social contract says there's this much work equivalent bundled up in these notes that we have. And we will agree, because we're part of the same system, that these can be applied. This work can be taken from the work that I did, and I can apply them to anything. I don't have to barter for it. I don't have, okay, I want a hog, but the hog owner wants a dishwasher. So I got to talk to the dishwasher guy, and what he really needs is a new stove. So then I got to really deliver him a stove. So I got to talk to the stove maker, and oh goodness, oh, I'm so lucky. The stove maker has 8 kids who all love milk, and I happen to own a dairy. Whew, now I can complete the chain and get my hog. Right? No, it's here's this much work. You can apply it to a stove, a dishwasher, a hog, cows that deliver milk. You can apply it to whatever you decide later. We don't have to rely on the barter system. My land is mine, not the king's. And I can take this work that I've done and I can go anywhere and buy another plot of land. It's not just like I'm leaving this land and now I have no land because the king didn't give me something else. So there's a great power and freedom of individual freedom tied up with money that we've created. And that's sort of the right-wing argument against socializing anything, is that every time you socialize an aspect of your life under government, you do give up an element of that freedom. But if there is no work, if we automate, if at some point nobody's needed to do whatever job it is you do right now, there needs to be another system ready to fill in that void. Because the other result is, if we don't head to the more socialized economy, you end up with people who don't have access to the social contract. And when you don't have access to the social contract, there is no social contract, which means you'll do what you need to survive regardless of all the other little social contracts that we call laws. Because people don't go hungry quietly in the night. People don't starve to death without trying to survive. So it has to head that direction the further and further we go down the road of automation.
Oh, yeah. As more jobs are lost to automation, something will we'll either have the revolution
or outsourcing. You could also add, outsourcing for this country at least, and automation might as well be the exact same conversation we're having. We could have eliminated automation and have just been talking about outsourcing. But both of those factors, are only putting coin in the pockets of those who own the automation or the outsourced company. They don't circulate and recycle through the economy any longer.
And what do you need the government for? Well, if you can grow your own food, well, I don't know. Somebody's got to build the robots. Yeah. Somebody's got to build the robots. Somebody's got to program the robots. Mm-hmm. Okay, you get somebody who loves to build robots. They can build robots because they love to build robots and they love to make algorithms and stuff. Now that could work, where people are doing things because they like to do it. I'm a doctor. Now the people are monitoring their own health. They've got these devices and things where they can tell what their heart rate is. They can tell if they're getting an infection. They can do all kinds of things. They got robots doing laser surgery, etc. So the doctor, you don't need the lab necessarily anymore. The doctor only has to do a limited number of things, and he's going to be a doctor because he likes to be a doctor. He's not going to be a doctor because he wants to make $1 bazillion and play golf all the time. So that could work. Somebody's got to build the robots. Maybe it can be just people working what they love to work. The only thing is, where does the safety net need? And I think it's security. The guy next door comes over and, I want your car, whatever. Policeman. We need security.
Who wants to be a policeman, right? But no, but this is to the point where, like, okay, well, the social contract again. This is why it's ultimately important. Like, what do I need the government for? I'm self-sustained. I got my solar panels. I got just a big enough farm that I can provide all the food. I've got a great well. I've got all of those elements. Well, you need to still be part of the social contract. Otherwise, there's nobody to say somebody can't just come and take your land. There's nothing to say that somebody can't build a polluting industrial plant right next to your farm and destroys your well water. The whole point of the social contract is that you're allowed not just your freedom, but you're prevented from taking anybody else's. This is built into every dollar bill. Is that contract of my work can't be stolen from me and is worth what its value is, right? And it's in property rights and in the United States are or were unlike anywhere else in the world when they were established. And they're still like what the rest of the world is now looking at and trying to base at their legal system. Our legal system, for all the complaints and people have about it, is an amazingly powerful social contract. All you sometimes need to do is look at the failing countries or some of the obscene acts that take place around this world and realize our legal system and our social contracts are strong, and they've been deliberate over time. They are, in a sense, machinery. So you're going to find people getting caught in really unfair situations with that machinery. But we need government. We absolutely do. The United States is nothing. The folks who say, I want to get government off my back, need to pretend that they're in the middle of one of these countries where the government is gone. This is the kind of places that ISIS is acting in now, an area without the sovereign government there. This is the civil wars of Syria. This is what's taking place in areas of Africa. This is what takes place when there is no government. You end up with a form of anarchy where, like, yeah, your totally self-sustained farm was great as long as there was big government surrounding every inch of your land with the social contract. As soon as that's gone, your land doesn't mean anything. That piece of paper that says that that's yours, absolutely meaningless to somebody who wants to take it. Right. So, of course, we need government. Anybody who claims we don't need government and a big, strong, powerful government is wrong. But again, the whole social contract is that the government, unlike the king, can't just come in, step in, and take anything from me. So it's that balance that I think they very deliberately and intelligently created when they created the Constitution for this country. They created 3 branches of government instead of 1 or 2, so that it would be very difficult to enact a sweeping change. The only way to preserve this is to turn it into a fucking bureaucracy in which nothing can get done. And if too many people disagree, we have gridlock. And while we look at like gridlock, Congress can't get anything done. They can't get anything through the Senate. This is so terrible. This is the dream of the founding fathers. The founding fathers are wherever they are, clapping. Woo, gridlock. This is what we wanted for this country. Absolute, total gridlock. Nobody can be anointed president of the United States and say, from here on out, we're going to go in a completely different direction. No, we don't want to go in a different direction. We want this slow, inching, incremental progress of democracy that cannot be destroyed at the whim. And this is why the Patriot Act was so disgustingly terrifying. Is because it was a sweeping change to privacy acts that was done largely in secret, was not transparent. It's one of those things that is the biggest thing in my lifetime that I can think of that went against the Constitution, that was in danger of really upsetting decades upon hundreds of years of gridlock and not being able to affect a negative sweeping change.
Excuse me for a second. I wanted to relay a question from the chat room. May have covered it. This is our friend Rorx. Let's see. Rorx is saying, Justin, don't you think as jobs dry up, consumer demand starts to dry up, and at some point the state just has to take over a lot of the automation for the sake of society? Presumably, by the time we reach that point, maintaining the automated system will be cheap, that the state could do it for minimal cost and at no cost to its citizens. Okay.
So that's part of the problem. That's part of that's a great question, because this is the crux of the problem of the socialized economy, is that you have the entrepreneurs protected by the Constitution who's like, hey, I created a machine that makes widgets bigger, better, faster, quicker, and I have 3 people running my company, but we supply widgets to the entire United States now. Actually, half the world, to be honest. It's half the world now is buying all of their widgets from us, even though there's only 3 of us who are physical humans who are working here. You cannot take that away from them. That would be unconstitutional. That is one of those parts of a capitalist society, capitalist democracy that you can't touch. But if each person's annual income is $1.5 trillion, yes, you should be taxing it at like 90%, because at that point you can live on $100 million a year, right? So there, that's where we were in the 40s and 50s and 60s. We were at 90% taxes for the wealthiest Americans. And what do you do with all that taxation? Well, you provide free healthcare, you provide free education, and you'll find some other entrepreneur who will pop up. And this is the Ayn Randian, the movers of the world, the machine makers, right? This is that elite from there who don't want government involvement. And I don't think, to be fair, that Ayn Rand was really that off. I think she was correct. I don't think you interfere with Elon Musk's. I don't think you go in there and create a body that says, I'm sorry, Elon Musk, we must spread the ability to make electric cars or reusable rockets. You can't have a monopoly on a very successful product. We're going to regulate you, and we're going to put in looters who are going to profit off you. I don't think you should be doing anything like that. I think that's counter to the principles of a democracy and capitalism and everything else. But on that profit from it, there should be a decent percentage that's coming back to the general public. This is how we've driven our economy always. It's always been this way. This is not new. In fact, the most difficulties and the highest unemployments we've seen have been in the wake of having a system like that. When we've dropped taxes on the wealthy, when we've deregulated, this is when we had outsourcing. Outsourcing showed up under Reagan. That's when we started outsourcing jobs and closing factories across this country, when we deregulated, when we allowed companies to move overseas and not be taxed. This is how we destroyed manufacturing in the United States. So all these things are a balance. I do think we should never make the mistakes that we've seen in communist Russia in terms of the government controlling manufacturing, who makes what. They had this, someday I've got to research this and figure out who this guy was. But they had this genius economist who created a physical representation of the Russian economy. And it was done with water. And it had all these valves you could turn and twist, and you would fill up this and would overflow into that. And basically it was like, if we manufactured this much of this good, it would pile out over here and filter over here. And it was this sort of water sculpture with moving parts that could represent what effect you would have if you turned down the price of steel or raised the price of coal, the effect it would have on the economy. And so what they tried to do is get this thing to be balanced and working as efficiently as possible. And as ridiculous as that sounds, it is ridiculous. You need a good economy to be destructive. You do need it to break things. You do need for email, for instance, and text messaging to really put the hurt on your mail delivery service so that you change your mail delivery service accordingly. You don't say, no, we're still going to have just as many mail carriers. We're gonna deliver mail just in the same volume, whether we have to manufacture empty pieces of paper to deliver. I don't know, like how you would compensate, right? That's like a great example, though. We're gonna have them deliver mail even when there's no mail to be delivered to your house. They're still gonna have to walk up to your house to maintain these jobs. Things like that are ridiculous. You can't force an economy to be doing things. You can't put limitations on progress, and you can't go in there as a government and dictate what is or isn't being manufactured. But at the same time, we also have to understand that as we become more, this sort of reminds me of the interview we did last night on TWIS, as the sharks began to migrate across the oceans more, right? as industries migrate quicker, as things that people did before as lifelong careers get phased out, we have to understand that our economy, that the structure of the work that people do is going to be different, that people aren't going to go to work for one company and work there for their lifetime anymore with benefits and a pension and all of these things. Those things are gone. Pensions are gone, right? Even a lot of employer healthcare has disappeared. That's why we've got a government-based system now. So we're going to have to find those balances, and we're going to constantly, the more flexible of a system that we build, the more we'll be able to survive those tribulations like housing crises or manufacturing declines. We need it. And I think right now we're close. I think we do need a good deal more socialism than we've got. But I don't think the answer would ever be in limiting or government control over entrepreneurial production. I don't think putting government in charge makes sense. I think people will always do better. Well, I mean, not that government isn't people, but I mean, I think individuals will always do better on some level. I mean, you look at Elon Musk. He fired off a rocket and caught it again, right? Why didn't NASA do that?
Yeah, I interrupt you for a second. Two things I would like to see that we really need to do that are screwing up our system. Mm-hmm. The first is monopolies. And so we've got, I mean, how much money does Apple have? $1 trillion or something? What do? They buy up smaller companies, and then they control the app or whatever the heck it is, and so they monopolize that final product, whatever it is. Google is doing it. They get big. With Google starting out as a search engine, now I don't know what I mean. They're doing some good things, but they're controlling everything, and that's not good. The bigger company is simply not can't maneuver quickly enough, and it stifles in innovation. So one, we got to really enforce anti-monopolistic laws, and we got to get rid of inherited wealth. That's the two things.
So, okay, I'm going to totally disagree with you on both counts. Right? I know. Didn't see it coming. I love a good monopoly. I love a monopoly of innovation, I guess I should say. You and I are talking right now through something that we are paying nothing for, that's giving us audio and visual communication and allowing us to broadcast it. This is brought to us by the monopoly that is Google, right? I think there is such a thing as a beneficial monopoly. I don't think that these companies that get bought up, these small companies, they don't just get disappeared. They get purchased, and the entrepreneurs sell them because it's ridiculous amount of money they're getting paid, and they're very happy to sell, and that's why they're selling them. And then they get brought into the bigger picture. So say you and I, wish we had, invented the Google Hangout. But we called it I don't know. Whatever. Chill out time. This is what we invented. Chill out time, which was exactly what Hangouts is now. We called it chill out time, where you chill out with your friends after work and you talk. And we just thought it was this cool way of like, I can see you, you can see me, and we're talking. And then Google saw it and said, okay, we love this idea. Here's $1 billion. Give it to us. And we're like, oh, wow. And our goal was at some point to charge people to do some sort of like telecommunicating. They could do meetings by voice phone communication or video phone, right? We had this whole idea. We're going to charge people $50 a pop, and they bought it and they just made it free. Okay. So now everybody's got it, right? They just added it to the lexicon of features that Google has. So that's a beneficial monopoly. There's also monopolies that I don't think are beneficial. Things like what the phone companies have had, or what maybe cable companies or internet access companies have. You know, if you have 3 decent broadband options to go with in your community, the prices drive down. If you have one, it's at a higher premium than they would charge anywhere else, right? So that to me is an unfair monopoly. When your monopoly is lack of alternative of services, that's a tough one. That one, if you can show that, for instance, Comcast, which is the only internet and cable supplier to small town USA, is charging the residents there an average of $150 a month. And yet in LA County, where there's 4 other broadband and cable, and there's Dish and there's another cable company, they're charging an average of $50. That to me is an example of a monopoly. When you're taking advantage of being the only option that people have. That to me is a negative monopoly. And even if you were a small time provider, but we're making 4 times the profits of a larger company, because you were the only person who could provide this service in that town, and so charge an exorbitant amount for it. To me, that's a bad example of bad monopoly. But I never felt like Microsoft Windows, for instance. Okay, they got Windows, and there was a lot of complaints. It's like, well, they're using this app. They're not letting anybody else do their calculator, or they're only using their own Excel spreadsheet. They should have other spreadsheets that are already on the computer when you buy it, and this sort of thing. Who builds a vehicle in this country and says, okay, we're going to let Ford make our headlights. We're going to have Nissan do our transmission. Honda, of course, is the only one who will build our engines. And Toyota, they're going to make the air conditioner. Like, nobody, no company would just outsource all of its pieces to be built. Let them be a monopoly for a good long time. And what do we have now? Nowadays, we have apps. Now, apps can be manufactured by just about anybody. The companies like Apple has to review them and look at them and say, okay, they got to meet these requirements. They can't bog down memory. They can't crash somebody's system. They can't have cookies. They can't have whatever it is, right? But the way that they've streamlined these technology monopolies is now giving people greater access to alternatives in the apps and the features and the functions of those larger apparatus.
Let me jump in with a comment from Rorx in the chat room.
Why is it? Does Rorx not have a video? Rorx, do you have a video camera? Why aren't you just in here with us? Come on.
Good point. And Rorx is saying it's necessary to maintain their companies as their customers' buying power has dwindled to the point where they can no longer afford what they're selling. I don't know.
Well, but wait. So we've created this already. We've already been creating this. And that's what outsourcing is. This is the whole thing with outsourcing is it used to be that the average income per capita percentage wise versus time was higher. Incomes have actually gone down, but we all seem to have all the big screen TVs and the products that we could possibly have in our homes. Why? Because they sent them someplace where people make pennies on the dollar to build them. So we can still buy them even though we don't make as much money as we used to, right? But the reason we don't make as much money as we used to is because the middle class has been destroyed because we sent the manufacturing overseas. And at first, when they sent the manufacturing overseas, the companies who did the outsourcing made tremendous profits. They were still selling it in the old world where you had a middle class that had an income. And they made tremendous profits by making it cheaper. Now they go over there just so they can make a margin, just so they have a margin to make so that they can sell us products cheap enough for us to even be able to afford them. And so it is a downward spiral to selling the cheapest so you can still be purchased by your clients. So you got to find cheaper labor. Like Chinese labor might be too expensive now. We might be moving manufacturing to Vietnam next, where they'll work for even less than the Chinese workers. Because right, and at some point you're going to run out of people to invest in this pyramid scheme of labor, right? So yeah, then what do you do, right? Then you've gotten to that point where your consumer who hasn't ever had a job, you're going to have to, I don't know, borrow money to inflate your economy, to allow them to have the buying power, to keep whatever companies who are still paying taxes alive, right? Oh, wait. That could lead to trillions of dollars of deficit, though. That we wouldn't. Oh, wait. That's what we're doing. And we're already there. That's the thing. We are actually already there. But we really don't need to be. And it is one of these things that there isn't going to be an answer in the economy that we have now. It's going to have to be an economy that we invent. A hybrid of our capitalist society with a hybridized socialist society, a combination of government funding, entrepreneurial enterprise. It's going to be a really weird thing.
I got to get back to, if you're talking about monopolies. Now, I guess I'm looking at horizontal monopolies as opposed to vertical. That is, you
which one was I looking
framework.
at? Huh? Which one didn't I like?
I think you wanted the horizontal, which is why
I thought the horizontal was okay, but I didn't like the vertical. Is that what it was? Maybe. I don't know what the.
How about diagonal? We gotta get diagonal.
A diagonal monopoly is okay at first, and then it gets progressively worse or better depending on the direction of.
And we can get a wave economy. We got
sometimes
that.
Yes, sometimes yes. Or like my cable service.
I mean,
paying the bill when it's great, and then it's all of a sudden they have a service interruption. I'm like, oh, I'm getting robbed.
You got this framework, the internet's a framework. Okay, somebody supplies the pipe, and right now that's supposed to be Comcast or your cable. They supply the pipe. Right. So there's a cost to supplying the pipe to the cable company, so I can get access to the internet. Right. Fine, no problem.
Infrastructure.
Okay, well, I don't know if that's right. In any event, I've got Apple. Apple sells me a cell phone, let's say, and it sells me devices. Hey, that's terrific. I buy their device, I pay the money. But now here comes the breakdown to me. When you say the apps, there are people who can, a bazillion apps out there. Why can't I, as a consumer, say, you know what? I like this Apple app over here. I'm going to put it on my Apple device. Why should Apple say I can't do that?
Okay, so that's a fair question, but Apple, they have a regulation. They have a social contract, if you will, with their apps, which is they can't, for instance, access your personal information, or they can't be able to infect your device with a virus. They can't be able to bog down your memory. They have to be built efficiently enough so that they're not utilizing all of the memory and slowing down any other apps that you would have normally working in the background. They have to interact kindly with the society of apps that are working on your phone. So that's what it is.
But why should Apple tell them, like, security? Well, there's being hacked. Apple's being hacked. No, I'll take care of my own security. Thank you very much. In fact, there will probably be somebody like LastPass will come along and say, you give us a couple of bucks, we will take care of your security. Everything you do goes through LastPass. They can have the $90 million, 90 million character, unbreakable code. I don't care about Apple. I don't want Apple to supply my security. I'll take care of it by paying another company. What
Right.
happens is Apple will come along and say, ooh, LastPass, I'm going to give you $1 bazillion. Now they control the security.
Yes. I get it. But I guess if it had played out like all the apps available for my iPhone were made by Apple only, I'd agree with you. But I there's only a couple, I think, on my phone that came from Apple. You know, AppWiz 420 is the one that designed my financial calculator, right? Like like it can, I mean, there's mom and pop stories, like the kid who invented some Flappy Bird thing, right? This thing made him like a millionaire overnight because he had this bird flying around, right? Whatever. Like there has been a commitment to open access, which I think is both part of the philosophy of the creators of Apple, but also a brilliant marketing strategy. Because if they hadn't, and somebody else had come out and been more open source and been more community oriented, they realized they would have lost out to them earlier, right? So especially with the generation that we were talking about, this kids today, right? The future of America. I think that they expect do-it-yourself and open access. And we have a generation of app builders and computer programmers and computer design experts in this world that we didn't have before, who demand access. And if you're going to lock their phone, they're going to break it, right? They're going to get whatever access they want to be able to run that Flash on their iPhone, right? If they want it on their Android and it's not available, they'll break the phone and get it on. So then at that point, when you're the manufacturer, you realize, oh, wow, people are just jailbreaking our devices to get this out there. Let's find a way to incorporate it so that it doesn't destroy our ability to, yes, control, but also protect our users, because that could be bad experiences. When one of the more, I think a little bit more to what you might be saying, because it's the analogy I think you started with, reminds me of something like between Comcast, a cable internet provider, and a Netflix, right? So all of a sudden Netflix is saying, hey, $12 a month, unlimited videos, down, watch, stream, constant, massive data usage all day long, all you want. And Comcast is, or the internet provider, is like, hey, wait, we might have some sort of arrangement for data where now our systems are clogged up because everybody's using massive data and you're making money off it, but you're using our pipeline. So how is this fair? And then they wanted to throttle or charge extra or subcharge. And there was a revolt. They were talking about doing this. I remember at one point Netflix tried to go to like $20 a month. And then people were like, oh, forget it. And they're like, oh, okay, sorry. We forget. We give up. So there is this sort of democracy. Internet is public forum. And the things that take place there are negotiated between the manufacturers, the device makers, the program makers, the app makers, and the public, who decides what they'll tolerate and what they don't. And it's pretty quick response. You know, I think the upcharge from Netflix lasted less than 2 months. They like announced it and it got shot down about that quick. Because so many people just canceled or, you know, stated that they would cancel. And they got the message quick, and it was public. It wasn't just like it went to their suggestion box and they got to stick on it, you know, or keep it in their private info. Like I'm sure people called the long distance companies and complained about what it costs, the 50 cents a minute it cost to call 2 counties away. But you didn't know that your friends and neighbors were also complaining, right? You had no idea that everybody in your county was complaining about the new long distance charges. But now those complaints are instantly public, right? We all know that 1 million Netflix subscribers objected to the rate hike. That information comes out and is public. And you're like, oh, yeah, I'm not the only one who complained. Million other people complained also, right? So then it forces industry to take place, because if you know that all your friends and neighbors don't like this, then you're empowered to object. You're empowered to create that change. And I think this is something that the democratization of that has been provided to us by the internet has really allowed that sort of thing to happen very quickly, and to positive effect. And I still love a benevolent. I still love my benevolent monopolies. I think there's monopolies that are important, and they don't have to last forever. You know, I think the AT&T monopoly did help communications in the United States, that built out infrastructure and built out efficiencies and all of that would not have been built out if every town had their own telecommunications company, right? I think having a monopoly for 20, 30 years was a net gain for us as a society, right? And then you break it up and you create competition within the community. Makes total sense. Because then instead of one long distance carrier, as soon as we had like 3 long distance carriers, what was it? Sprint, AT&T, MCI, was that one? As soon as you had multiple long distance carriers, you would get an offer every other month to switch your long distance carrier. This is before cell phones, for the kids who are listening. So you might not understand any of these terms I'm talking about. But you would have these different long distance carriers who would vie for your business. Well, they're going to charge you 20 cents a minute to call your foreign country. I'll be 10 cents a minute. No, come back to me. I know you left, but come back and you'll get the special 5 cents a minute, right? So competition does drive down price, but I don't think you would have had the infrastructure in place to do so if you didn't have a monopoly that lasted, about a half a century, right? And I think if we just had Apple versus Android, and Windows is trying, but they're not doing too good. They're just not in the cell phone industry. I think that 2-party monopoly will if you let them fight it out for the next 20 years, 30 years, and then break them up, then you'll have more competition. At a time when the infrastructure has been built up to the point where those broken up companies can compete equally, where they're all inheriting some aspect of that previous company that's built the infrastructure of towers, that's built the infrastructure of connectivity. Because you could say, okay, we're gonna break up whatever computer company. We're gonna break Apple up into 5 different companies. And then you have 5 different companies, and not a single one of them is nearly as good at producing product as Apple was as a whole. So you got to let these things run to the point where they're that one option in town, where they've really succeeded. When you've really succeeded as a monopoly is the point at which you need to be broken up. When you really, if Apple does so good that Microsoft nobody even talks about or barely remembers. Right? There is no other operating system other than Apple. That might be the time to break them up, but not while they're vying to be better than the other guy. Not while they're still creating things like this, offering them for free. Google in this case, offering us this communication. Why would we use a different communication? Right? Why would we use Skype? Why would we use whatever? I don't even know what else is out there. Some sort of teleconference thing that they want to charge your business $100 a month to utilize, and doesn't work nearly as well as this. Why would you use those? No, this is free. And at some point, if this gets broken up and there's 4 companies that have something like this that works just as well, fantastic. Then we can have options. But right now, while we're inventing this world, keep the monopolies strong, let them continue to innovate, and don't get in their way.
Well, one thing, I mean, as you were talking, it's the pace of technological change is happening so quickly that it's taking care of the monopoly problem.
Right.
I mean, you're right, because I was thinking, 10 years ago? What was it? Microsoft's taken over the world. Well, you got to do something about Microsoft. They're taking over the world. Well, what happens? Didn't take over the world. Then Apple is, then Apple comes along. They got the iPhones and they're doing terrific. Well, then what comes along? Android, open source. So you're completely right. It actually is the pace of technological change is taking care of monopoly problems.
And it's a great example too, because while Apple is allowing other people to make apps, that's not how they started it out. And that's where Android really found its niche. It said, if you want to make an app for us, go ahead. We don't even need to take a part of it or piece of it, right? So all of a sudden, you have a world of options if you have an Android, and these limited sort of factory options on your iPhone. And iPhone had to catch up on that. And that was tactic. That was strategy. That was realizing this is a weakness. And that will continue to happen, I think, now that we're in this technological age. We're going to continue to have monopolies that, as much as they try to control things, as soon as there's an option for that open source, it will become massively popular. And you can also look at things like you were mentioning how Snapchat's used by more people than Facebook. Oh no, Facebook. Oh, everybody's using it. It destroyed MySpace. And before that, I think it was Friendster. Like, there've been, as new innovations come about, there's a new monopoly to social interaction, right? Like it was like, and now there's YouTube. And what is YouTube made up of? YouTube is entirely made up of user contributions. There's not I mean, Netflix is content that was made by other users, but it was, recollect. It's like the Rerun Central. But now they produce their own shows. They're producing their own shows, of which my co-host from This Week in Science was on one of those shows as of today, right? And YouTube is all user-driven content. There's a democracy.
Think of what Patreon has done. This Week in Science, 40 years ago, Kirsten would have had to go to a TV company or something, and to get a platform, to get a chance to say anything, particularly at fate like this.
How many years ago?
Well, 50.
Okay, 50 years ago. So am I doing my own commercials? Hi, this is Justin from This Week in Science. I don't always play football, but when I do, it's for Wells Fargo, the bank you can trust with your toothpaste. It would be this sort of like, we'd be doing commercials in the middle. We'd be sponsored. We'd have to incorporate them into the show somehow. It would be this whole thing, which This Week in Science doesn't do. Which most YouTube now, they do have their commercials on there too. That helps provide some content, some payment content. There's always PBS. But you're right. The way that people finance media is different, and that's the opposite of monopolization. It's a democratization of media has been taking place. Some mostly, I think, for good. There's some ill effects. You can drill down on your crazy conspiracy theory videos and watch nothing but those and immerse yourself in a world of your own creation, which I don't think is entirely healthy. You can watch nothing but right-wing videos or left-wing videos. You could probably go onto the internets and see nothing but cats playing, and sort of create that as your entire reference for the outside world. So not necessarily healthy, but gosh, probably not too much worse than watching the fifth version of a crime investigation CSI show, every night. Like there's worse things than.
Oh, kids. When I was 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, what did I do? Well, actually, when I was younger, 3, 4, 5, 6, I listened to a phonograph of the little tugboat that could 9 hours a day, over and over. And then My Little Pony came along, and that's just the way kids are. So go ahead.
So actually, I had a phonograph with 78s, which were these really thick records. Yeah. And they played it at different speeds, and I had a switch that had the different speeds on it. I had a modern record player, so I could play the 45s and I could play the 78s too, right? And yeah, there were these albums that would be stories, and you would listen to the story on the album, and it was one of the weirdest things actually was I had this Woody Woodpecker album, and they come in this sort of like book fold, like it would be this thick thing with a binder, and you would open it up and there'd be a record on each side, and it was like part A, side B, 2A, 2B, and you'd go through the series of the story. But there was this one Woody Woodpecker, and I played it at this, I guess I had it on the wrong speed, and so instead of the Woody Woodpeckers, right, it was a guy who was at normal speed doing the voice acting, and he was like, ha 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 ha, and I was like, oh, it's just some guy, some dad out there going ha 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 ha, but they sped it up so he sounds like this meth affected woodpecker talking. Oh, and it just that's when I got the urge to do radio theater, actually.
Yeah, I went for they got Ovaltine. Ovaltine got me with the decoder ring. I bought 97,000 packages of Ovaltine. I got the decoder ring, and the message was buy Ovaltine.
Was it really? Are
you
serious?
That was basically it. No, that was true. That was basically it.
I wish I was their marketing director. I would have been like, wise up, kid. Your parents are onto you. That would have been the decoding. And then it'd be like, oh, what did they figure out? Oh, that I've been on Ovaltine all this time. But so there has been a shift too. Video games have been a massive shift in media. And it's one of these things that when we listen to these records, we just listened. Then television, we would watch the television, and the story would happen at us, and we'd ooh and ah and be in suspense, and then relief or whatever was going on. But it was at us. Now, video games, you're the participant. You're the hero in the story, right? You're the one running around affecting the things. And so one of the things that I've kind of noticed, my own kids is, or at least in the oldest, who played a lot of video games, is that they're less interested in having a story told at them. They want to participate in the story. And so now there's video games that are longer than a feature-length film. They could be a mystery. They could be, whatever saga the story is. But it's like a choose-your-own-adventure book. It's one where you get to make decisions that affect the ultimate outcome of the story, the route that the story takes, the path the story takes. And that interactiveness, now that that's a part of this generation's media intake, I wonder how well a media told at them will continue to be in the future. And I'm sort of trying to picture how like a future movie theater could work, where everybody in the theater is helping choose the story or working together on the story in some way, because I think that's sort of where they want to be participators in the story on some level. So media is going to continue to change that way too. And whether it's we take it for granted now. If you're born after maybe 1980 93, you've always been able to take it for granted that you can choose the content that you're going to view, right? I can go onto Netflix or YouTube, and I can look up The Late Show, and I can watch it at 11 a.m., right? And I can binge watch a season of whatever that I haven't seen on Netflix when I choose to. And broadcast television for a near century was, here's what's on at 8. If you missed it, wait till summer, when we're going to replay it if you happen to watch when we replay it. Like, it was, you know, that whole idea of going and watching that whatever night of the week Seinfeld episode it was, and then people would talk about it the next day. It's sort of gone. That's why we have spoiler alerts is such a big thing, because you could have watched the entire season last night, or you might not watch it till a month from now. But you're going to always have the ability to choose when you take in content, and you can choose what content it has. So that's a whole layer of media intake also that's changed forever, and you can't go back. It's not going to be, with the exception of live sporting events, I suppose, you're not going to be able to take back the choice of when to view from the public again. And the interactive thing from the video games is one of those things that's also not going away. That's something that's going to increase. More and more video games are turning into sort of novellas. They're telling stories, and they're allowing you to choose how those stories unfold, and allowing you to make choices within them. So there's a tremendous amount of democratization taking place in technology, and it's only going to increase. And so those companies that have got monopolies, if we would say that Netflix has any sort of monopoly on and destroying our video store, and think of that. There's jobs, there's automation, right? Netflix is fantastic. I would never give it up. But there used to be 3 different places in town where you could go and rent old movies, and they're all gone. So we eliminate jobs. We get this sort of democratized ability to have media on demand. And I agree that it's a good thing, even though there was 3 businesses that are now destroyed in my town. It's too bad there's not some sort of, like, we should have some sort of social contract of if you become obsolete. Like, if you worked at the video store, and yeah, you only made minimum wage, and maybe back then minimum wage was $4.25 an hour. Okay? Hear me out on this and Netflix comes along, and within a few years, video stores are closing all over the place, and you lose your job. There should be some form of socialization that says, Ed, I know you worked at the video store. I know you made $4.25. And I know video stores don't exist anymore. So here's the thing. We're going to give you the equivalent of your $4.25, 30-hour-a-week salary for the rest of your life. And you can have that on top of the next job that you take. Fantastic. So my job became obsolete, but I'm still getting paid by it. And now I'm free to go out there and reinvent myself to take on the next job or the next challenge. And then you're going to have this whole pool of people who scan around like, okay, what's the next thing going obsolete? Because I want that job. I just need to have it for 2 years before it goes obsolete, and then I get the lifetime pay on it. And that'd be fantastic. You'd have people totally applying themselves to jobs that are about to go obsolete. But we're going to make everything obsolete at some point. I mean, we may already be at a point where we can make a lot more jobs obsolete than have happened. And when we do, we need a backup plan. We need to come up with a system for allowing the obsolete to continue. And I'm going to have to be right back. I'm going to be off mic and off ears for a bit.
Okay.
Actually, holy smokes, it's 11:20. I got to go to bed. I'm already past my bedtime.
Yeah, okay. I've been here since 11:30, so
yeah, I just got to 11:30. So, and I'm already tired.
Okay.
All right, Ed. I'll try to see you again next week.
Okay. I'm probably going to sign off myself as well because, as they say, it's 2:30 in the morning here.
Yeah.
So I'm talked out. Great having you.
Great seeing you again, Ed. I hope I can make it again next week.
Look forward to it. And Pam may be joining us.
Yeah.
Passing another law test today.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll see you.
She'll make it. She'll be fine.
All
All right, Ed.
right.